everybody to another episode of What the Fuck Paranormal Chat with the Naked Bigfoot. I am your host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. Before we begin tonight's episode, I want to thank everybody again for watching it live, and I want to thank everybody for, if you don't get a chance to watch it live, for watching it later on. I appreciate you and I love you. A little bit of housekeeping. Um, Hey, Chris, what's up? I think Super Hara Show is somewhere around here, too. Um, Housekeeping before we begin. I want to hurry up with the housekeeping because tonight's episode is kind of cool. So I think everybody's really going to enjoy tonight's episode a great deal. It's on a topic that a lot of people enjoy hearing about. Okay, housekeeping. As always, What the Fuck Paranormal Chat is everything that is said is purely for information and entertaining purposes only. I am not here to change your mind, change your heart, change your religion, change your point of view. I do encourage those who feel the need after watching an episode who want to go out and be more curious about the world and investigate all these wonderful things that are out there in the supernatural, the preternatural, and the paranormal world. I encourage you to go forth and do it, but do it safely. Do not be a Mike and put yourself at risk. I did a lot of dumb shit. As if you watch any of my previous videos, I admit to I did a lot of dumb shit. Mostly out of ignorance. Hey, Heavy Metal, welcome on, dude. Good to see you. If you have any small children in the room, be warned. There will be many foul words being used tonight in all of my episodes. Namely, the title of the of the show, for cat's sake. But if you do not wish to expose your children to any bad words this early in their life, please ask them to leave the room or wear headphones while watching my show. Also, there is a drinking game that we play on What the Fuck Paranormal Chat. Excuse me. When you hear me say the phrase or some form of the phrase, "That's a story for another day," or "That's a story for another time," please take a sip of your adult beverage. Dude, I use a lot of bad words. I use a lot of fucking bad words. I hate fucking YouTube and their notifications. I don't get any notifications at all. Fuck. If you hear me say "That's a story for another day" or "That's a story for another time," please take a sip of your adult beverage. If you do not drink adult beverages, then please drink a sip of your tea, coffee, or water. For those who are partaking of adult beverages, by the end of this episode, you will more than likely be drunk as fuck. So I do not encourage you to go forth and drive. Please sleep where you are or get somebody to drive you to your destination. Oh, one other bit of news. I will be on Super Horror Show's live stream next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do not know what to expect. I think we're going to have a great time talking about all kinds of crazy shit. Please tune in to Super Horror Show. He's in the chat tonight. Feel free to ask him, any questions, or please come to the show and ask me any questions. Questions you may not want to ask me here, but might want to ask me in the presence of Super Horror Show. It's going to be a sexy time. It's always sexy time with me. Well, that's a story for another day. But you should. If you do not subscribe to Super Horror Show's channel, you should. It's a lot of fun. It's an eclectic mix of animated shorts, live streams, dealing with horror themes, dealing with the paranormal, the supernatural, the insanity. He does some really neat comedic pieces on there. He's a lot of fun. If you need a good laugh and want to see some really amazing animation, you definitely should tune into Super Horror Show. He does shit. It's pretty fucking amazing. Very talented. Very talented young man. Okay, on with tonight's show. As everybody well may or may not know, tonight's episode is entitled Haunted Objects. I want to make it really clear when I say haunted objects. There's a difference between haunted objects and cursed objects. I will not be talking about cursed objects tonight. Cursed objects are objects that have been, by definition, fucking cursed. They've been cursed. Being in the presence of a cursed object usually will end up poorly for the person that's in the same room who owns the object. It'll have nothing to do with spirits, whether they be once human, inhuman, or non-human. Tonight we'll be discussing those. We'll be discussing haunted objects that are haunted either with an attachment, a spiritual attachment to them, or will act as a vessel for a spirit to channel itself through, to communicate with you for. There is a little bit of a difference. When I say attachment, God, I wish Papa Joey was on tonight. Heavy Metal and Super Horror Show may know this already. When I've been on their show talking about Julie the Haunted Doll on the truth about beer. And my love-hate relationship with Julie the Haunted Doll. Julie the Haunted Doll has it's owned by the Truth About Beer guys. They're amazing, but they own a doll that has an attachment of a spirit of a little girl. It's very tragic. It's a very active doll too. This spirit of that little girl is incredibly active. And really, really fucks up electrical equipment around her when she's in the right mood. So, and that's what I mean by an attachment. It could be a doll, it could be a stuffed bear, it could be a toy. Hell, it could be a lampshade. But usually, when somebody dies, when a person dies, usually they have. In life, they had some great love for this object, this personal object. So when they die, sometimes their spirit attaches to it and lingers around that object and can communicate and act through that object, which is different from a channeling object. There are some people and now a channeling object is a little bit different. Most channeling objects that are considered haunted objects still, because of the spirits that come through on them, channeling objects are created to channel the spirit. Whether it doesn't have to be a human spirit, it can be a non-human spirit. It could be a once human spirit. Most likely, channeling objects do not pull in once human spirits at all. They just don't, because of what the purpose of the objects are for. Unlike actual objects that have attachments to them, those are caused by incidental. Those are also incidental hauntings too. That's another big word and phrase for tonight, is incidental haunting, which I may explain one day, but that's a story for another day, because I could go all fucking night long talking about incidental hauntings and how those work. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, about dying in a sex shop. I used to make jokes all the time about haunted sex dolls, about sex dolls that were haunted or possessed. And how would you exorcise the spirit that was haunting, or deal with a spirit that was haunting a blow up doll or a dildo? Um, just putting that out there. Sorry, I'm getting off subject, but every time I start talking about that, somebody always brings up um, sex dolls. Hey, Paranormal World investigators. Good to have you on tonight, dude. Okay. Chain link objects. These are created by people, by practitioners, with quotation marks around their name. They're created by people to channel spirits of information through them. And spirits of information, or spirits of information, slight difference. Hey, Sherry, sorry. Huh? I'm not good with identifying the sex of people. You gotta forgive me. I'm a major fuck up when it comes to that. Chilling objects. They're created to channel spirits of intellect and spirits of information through them. Spirits of intellect are non-human or inhuman spirits that you can ask questions of, and they can generally provide the answers, pretty specific answers to questions that you have. Originally, that's why crystal balls were created, to act as channeling objects to pull in spirits of intellect. But they slowly devolved into using them as trying to contact, or as objects of divination, or trying to contact one's human spirits with it. So I should do just a show on the history of crystal balls. I've had some experience with crystal balls, and those are absolute. Drew, welcome. Um, Fuck, my brain just turned off. I've had some experience with crystal balls, bad experiences with crystal balls, but that's a story for another day. Um, I want to spend now. There are people out there who actually seek out haunted objects. They don't seek out objects, channeling objects. They actually seek out objects that have attachment objects, objects that have attachments on them. Um, which personally, I think it's. I'm both intrigued by it and horrified by it. Um, because not all attachments are, or just not to sound cliche, they are not good. They're pretty fucking bad. Um, and sometimes an attached spirit will lie and pretend to be a small child, and in actuality, it's the attachment of a fucking serial killer, and they're working their way into your life to hurt you. That's an extreme case, but that's why I've had enough experience with objects like this, um, to know that they're not something to fuck around with. Um, you can have a few objects here and there. I wouldn't place them in everyday rooms where you like to go sit and, the family gathers at. They should always be isolated away from foot traffic and from the general population in your household. In my opinion, this is in my opinions. Before I start getting the evil emails about it, oh, I have a whole wall of fucking haunted dolls, that were all owned by the greatest serial killers in the world, and my family eats dinner in front of them every night. They don't hurt us. Well, bully for you. I'm just giving you my opinion. And if you do have a wall full of haunted dolls, full of serial killer spirits, you're fucking stupid. I'm just Not wanting to offend, but that's my opinion. Um, Sometimes people are gifted objects. Now, when I say attached objects, I made examples of, I said examples of like toys or personal things like a pocket watch or a knife or something like that. But they can also be really, really mundane objects. They could be a rock. And tonight you're going to see, I'm going to share with you, an object that I have, an attached object that I have tonight. Ooh, thank you very much for sharing that out. I appreciate you, Drew. Um, I'll be sharing with you one of those objects. I'll be sharing with you two objects tonight. Um, One of them is a channeling object that was made and given to me. It's a doll. And I say that in loose terms. When I show it to you, it doesn't look like your typical doll. The other is actually a piece of the tombstone of a very famous person in voodoo. Which, if anybody's on Twitter, you already know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Marie Laveau from her actual burial site, where because she's not actually buried in St. John's Cemetery number 1 in New Orleans. Hate to break it in for those people who want to believe that, but she's not buried there. Her family has, her descendants, she's on a family. It's a family house that's been in the family for generations since she passed away in the late 1800s, the late 1880s. Her body is actually interred there. But because of her influence in New Orleans, and she helped shape New Orleans society at the time, they erected this monument to her in the cemetery. But it does not contain her bones or her dust or any remnant of her body whatsoever. And I actually have a piece of stone from the site of where she was actually buried at. And I'll explain that in more detail later. But what I want to start talking about first is something that I call the answering doll. Okay. I own a number of objects that I were either given to me because they bothered people so much, or they were given to me because people thought that I needed it, or they were given to me as a gift in their own twisted way of acknowledging me in some manner. It's a very small collection. I have a number of human remains that were given to me, teeth, bones of family members who had died, and they had their teeth. For those who don't know, it was a Victorian practice in America as well as in European countries, and in the South in particular. It was to keep a piece of a relative in their house, usually under glass or behind a picture frame of the person, when they were a picture of them when they were alive, and they would either put a tooth, a lock of hair in there with it. Just to give you all I know I completely deviated there for a second, so uh, um, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail, Drew, but it wasn't that much of an honor, trust me. I've got some history with the Laveau, the descendants of Marie Laveau. I've got some long history as a voodoo priest with them. All right. Okay. This object that I'm going to show it to you in a second. So I'm going to pull it back and show it to you. Yes, I'm in bed. I do all my shows from my bed. For those who are shocked and surprised, you will not see any naughty bits. You'll just see me in bed. Okay. Um, this object was given to me by a really she was she was batshit in the nicest way. Christine, good seeing you, girl. Never too late. You're never too late, Christine. You're here. Love you long time. The lady, she was a girl at the time. She was one of the you'll hear me if you look at my show about psychic mediums, you know that there's only a handful that I put any trust in whatsoever, that they come from a long bloodline of psychic mediums. Um, she was one of the more sane people. But she had a really amazing talent at creating channeling objects that you could channel. Spirits could be channeled through it to provide advice, provide answers and information. I had helped her out with a situation, which that's a story for another day. The situation that I helped her out with was pretty fucked up and intense. Um, and she did not know how to handle it. It was blowing her mind. She was on the edge of completely going batshit bonkers. But I was able to help her and pull her through it, and deal with what was tormenting her at the time. That's a story for another day. You need to really, you'll hear that story at some point, hopefully, because it's a pretty intense one. But her way of things was that she made me this doll. She called it I call it the answering doll. Let me show it to you. Okay, that's the back of it. You can see that little pouchy thing right there. And if you turn it around, this is its face and its body. Alrighty. I call it the answering doll based on what she told me it did. I never have used it. Um, but what it does is that little thing on the back of it, that little backpacky thing on the back of it, right here. Ah, fuck. I'll pull it out. This right here, and I'm not going to open it up, because when you open it up, you activate it, okay? You set up the connection, but you unfurl this, and inside of it is a piece of parchment. But I'm not going to open it up because it's going to activate it. But you can see it does open up and unfold, and there's a piece of parchment in it. Once you do that, once you open it up, you set up a connection with the spirit of intellect, she told me. And for those of you who are ghost investigators and hunters, tonight's a good night to really get your REM pods or your gear, your millimeters, whatever you want to do, because I have a sneaky suspicion that you're going to hear some shit and get some activity based on these objects tonight that are going to come through on the live chat. Do not fear. I'll explain later why you shouldn't be afraid of anything coming through and getting you, or attaching itself through this live chat to you. And I'll explain later why that's not going to happen. It's going to come in really important when we talk about the second object. But the answering doll, you write down your question, you fold it back over. She told me if you really want your question answered with detail, is to prick your finger and leave a drop of blood on the parchment. And of course, I arched an eyebrow when she said that. I went, that ain't gonna happen, Toots. But I did not say that to her because she was already fragile enough as it was. I didn't want to shatter her anymore with my smart assiness. But it sets up a link with the spirit of intellect. This doll has never been activated once since I've had it. And I've had it for, oh good God, it's been almost 30 years. I've had this doll for almost 30 years. And I never activated it. But I will tell you this, whatever spirit of intellect that comes through this to answer your questions, it's waiting to come through. Why, you may ask, do I say that? Is that I actually had to move this from where I had it at in my studio. because whatever is around well, I'm not going to say attached, but whatever this is connected to, whatever channel, the channel that it is, of course, the channel object, whatever it's connected to, is incredibly powerful. It would blow out every light bulb. The light bulbs, and this went on for a fucking month before I realized what was going on. That it was this object that was doing it. That would blow out every light bulb in my studio. every brand new light bulbs wouldn't last more than a day, and they would pop. They would just get really bright, and they would pop. And this happened after I fucking changed the bulbs a million times, and I had the all the sockets checked by an electrician. And they told me there was nothing wrong with anything. And I start looking around because I'm not a person who immediately jumps to the supernatural saying, oh my God, my studio is being haunted. No, I had an electrician come in first and check all the outlets and sockets first, to make sure I did not, have any faulty wiring that was going to start a fire. And then when I looked around, that the only thing in the room, then my paranormal sense kicked in. I went, okay, something is fucking happening. Something preternatural is happening. And the only object that I had in the room that had any connection to the supernatural, or the paranormal, or the preternatural, was this answering doll. So I took the answering doll out of the room and I put it in a cedar box, and I sealed the edges of it with blood wax. God, please don't ask me to explain what blood wax is. I will have to. I'll do a whole show about how to seal shit away. I sealed it up in blood wax and put it in my basement. And what do you know? Shit went back to normal in the studio. Didn't have any more bulbs that blew out in the studio anymore. Everything went back to normal in there. I didn't have any lights that looked like they were having a huge power surge and then popping all of a sudden anymore whatsoever. It literally was night and day. It changed that quickly. And that just utterly blew my mind. When I sealed it in that cedar box with blood wax, that was the equivalent of taking a piece of kryptonite and sealing it away in a lead box. It's the most extreme way to protect, to cut it, to sever the connection of spiritual energy from an object, is what I did when I sealed it like that. I didn't keep it like that for long. I thought that would have been a disservice to store it that way. So what I did, after a few days, once I realized what it was that object. Not to offend the spirit of intellect that was that would channel through, that was using that as a channel object. I took it out, and if you look back on it, right here, I call these wings, but they're not wings. You'll see two little objects. One right, shit, fuck. Not that one, but that right there. You may not see it really well. And there is another one on this side. Motherfucker. I am not good. Son of a bitch. It better still be there, or I'm fucked. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. One of the things in the tradition of hoodoo and voodoo is that you can attach sigils to seal things away with. And those two objects I just pointed out to you are pieces of a veve that's devoted to the Loa Simbi. And I asked that Simbi would seal it away until it was time for me to use it. And I attached those two copper sigils to the doll. and it rendered the doll, the answering doll, inert. Um, and that's, I'm not saying it still can't be used with those symbols on it, but it keeps it from bleeding. It keeps supernatural energies from bleeding away from the doll. It keeps the energies within the doll. It doesn't let them bleed out and affect the natural world around them. That's what that does. It keeps it confined within that doll, if that makes sense to everybody, which I hope it does. And that's one of the reasons why, again, I did not open up um, that little information package that was on the back of it. Because if I had done that, the pack would have been sealed, and those little sigils that I have sewn onto the doll would have been pretty much useless at that point, because I was setting up the contract with the spirit of intellect now, and I was not. I'm still not ready to do that. But I'll have to tell that story another time. That's a story for another time. Why I don't truck with foreign spirits. Doesn't get much more voodoo than what I just said, by the way. Oh, real quick. Um, Super Horror Show. When I do come on your show, we're going to talk a lot about using the word witch doctor. I'm just kidding. Just felt the need to fuck with you for a second because that popped into my head. Um, okay. I'm just joking. I'm not mad. I am not Bakor. Bakor would have been incredibly offended by that. I'll have to explain that on your show by that. Um, okay, the next object. Okay, I was talking about sealing away a piece of kryptonite in a lead box being like major containment when it comes to blood seal and everything. But sometimes some objects, their energies, haunted objects, their energies are so strong. Their connection with the spirit is so intense that it takes some really, really crazy measures, well, extreme measures, to seal them away. Um, and that is true with the next object that I'm going to share with you. It's a non-traditional haunted object. That's what I prefer to call it that. So I probably just coined a phrase. By the way, that's officially trademarked now, so nobody steal it. And um, that I actually had to go out. I actually had to take time to create a hex box to put this object in to keep it sealed away. And now for anybody who's a paranormal investigator, you might want to, start listening and start recording or start paying attention, because the object I'm about to show you is off the fucking wall charged. I was going to send it to somebody, but something very unfortunate happened when I was about to box this thing up and send it to them. Um, and that was a hint to me not to do it. This object can actually affect the spirit that is around this object. Can actually really, really, really affect its surroundings and affect the people around it and the animals and the plants around it. Oh fuck! Just let me say it. This real quick, before I whip it out and we'll talk about it. That was sounded more sexual than it meant it to be. Um, this object, for those who do not know, in the practice, for those who do not know, I'm a voodoo priest, a Hungan. Um, in Louisiana, in New Orleans, there is a tradition for female voodoo priests, which are called mambos. For those who did not know, they're called mambos. Um, and New Orleans has always had a long tradition of families mambos, of being known as the Queen of Voodoo of Louisiana. They ran everything when it came to the religion. They had a lot of influence in the social structure in Louisiana, um, well, in New Orleans. And the most famous queen of voodoo um, was the Mambo Marie Laveau. Well, and plus her daughter, her first daughter, um, also named Marie Laveau, but was known as Marie Laveau II. Um, she was incredibly influential in the culture in the of New Orleans. Um, she introduced the Oratio Saints to the white people of New Orleans for the very first time. Um, she openly conducted rituals at the time. She was married to her second husband was a white man, whom she had, I think, 15 children with. And they had, of course, numerous grandchildren. Uh, she practiced her faith and her religion, with no fear, absolutely no fear. She was very well respected by both the white community and with the Creole community as well, and with the practitioners of and the followers of voodoo, voodoo. She was an utter nightmare to people. She actually kept slaves. Um, Her servants, though, her house servants, who were part of her parish, she treated like shit. She was a midwife, which, by the way, with any voodoo practitioner, those things go hand in hand with being a type of midwife and healing the sick and working to heal the sick. It's something that is part of our charge as priests to do, and priestesses, mambos, hungan and mambos to do, is to treat the sick and the ill. Um, she was an interesting character. She lived to be 79, I believe. And as I said earlier, she was not interred. They created that monument out in Saint Jean Cemetery Number One, which nobody has access to anymore, because that cemetery has been just torn all straight to hell, from what I understand. In the last 10 years, it's been utterly destroyed, and you just don't have access to it anymore. Her body was taken by her huge family, um, and was actually interred at one of the properties of her second husband, who was incredibly wealthy, and interred at one of their smaller properties outside of New Orleans. Long story short, when I was in New Orleans, word got out in the community when Papa Thomas, who I miss dearly, who is passed from this world, but I still see often. But I still miss having him sit beside me and drink tea with me. He's the one who brought me into the mysteries of the Voodoo religion, and I became his son, and became a Hungan priest after he died. Um, I owe everything. I owe so much to that man. But word got out that there was, the heir to Papa Thomas. And by the way, practitioners of voodoo who are held in high esteem in the community, male practitioners, always have, the name Papa ahead of their name. So you'll hear me say that often. I am not old enough, quote unquote, old enough to bear that honorific, but I did have a name that was given to me, which is Il Detente, which is he who tempts. Long story short. There's a long story behind that. That's a story for another day. But word got out that the heir to Papa Thomas's legacy and heir to his parishioners, and heir to his territory, come to find out too, was a white man from outside the, from an outsider, a white outsider that was brought into the mysteries of it. So I was approached by her descendants, Marie Laveau's descendants, to come, you know, and hold a ritual with them one night and have dinner with them. They wanted to feel me out. Um, I'll do a live stream about this story another day. Um, but her descendants have quite a racket going on in New Orleans right now. Um, and they fucked with the wrong gun too. Um, I just did not. I politely declined joining them in any meaningful sense. But while I was there and I was conducting a ritual with them, um, they took me to the back of the house. When you say back of the house in the South, for those who don't know, that means your backyard. And there was a path back there that led back into the woods towards the swamp. And they guided me back there, and they showed me this is where Marie Laveau was actually buried at. Huge monument that was erected back there in the woods. Huge monument. Around the headstone, there were places where the headstone had been chipped off. Um, and they told me they believed that Mama Mambo, Mother Mambo, would want me to have this. And they chiseled off a piece of her tombstone. They handed it to me. And they said, you now will have Mother Mambo with you at always to assist you in all of your, future castings and future workings. You now have you're now part of her, and she's a part of you. Well, when they sat it in my hand, I wasn't going to refuse it. You don't refuse gifts from people like that. It felt like I had stuck my finger in a light socket. And at the time I had hair. My hair literally stood on ends on my arms and on my head. And I realized that I had something very dangerous with me. That it had part of the spirit of Marie Laveau within it. Um, I kept it in my apothecary for quite some time. And sitting on a shelf in my apothecary where I do my herbal blends and my herbal work and different bags and potions and powders that I work on and I create. And I found that my ingredients were spoiling much, much faster than they should have been spoiling. And it didn't start happening until I brought that rock into the room. I picked it up because I was going to move it. I was actually going to bury it in the yard. But when I picked up the rock, um, this voice came through. This disembodied voice in the room came through. Thick, crazy thick Creole accent. Um, for those who don't know, think of a country French, a cross between somebody from Texas and somebody from France. Think of an accent like that. And it's a woman's voice, a very female woman's voice that came through around me. And she said, and I knew then it had to have been, it was the voice of Marie Laveau. And she said, so this is the white man who claims my legacy. And I dropped that rock when I heard that. I dropped that bitch so fast. And it hit the ground. And I walked out of my apothecary and I didn't go back in there for 6 days. Because that's how long it took me to sanctify a hex box. What a hex box is, it completely contains spiritual energies and the spirit that is attached to the stone from interacting with the physical world whatsoever. And one thing about a haunted object is for those who study them and those who may own them and can testify to this, they're never dead batteries. They're always super ultra active all the time. They may take pauses, of time where they don't do anything or say anything or act about anything. But there are times in which you just can't shut the fucking thing off. It just won't stop. The spirit is just coming through loud and clear. And I knew, oh, thank you, Christine. I can talk about my faith all day and all night, being the big bald white guy. But before we get too late, let me show you the box it's in. Here, maybe. This is my Hex Box that I made. Well, I didn't make it, but I sanctified it. You see that little latch right there on it. And there's the side. It's a very cute little box. It's a very heavy-ass little box, too. And inside this box is that stone. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is, since we have about 15 minutes to go, is that I'm going to open this box up. And it's been quite some time since I've messed with this thing. I've used it a couple of times in a couple of rituals. And Mambo Marie Laveau, she did not get in my way. I think she aided me a couple of times. I don't think she cares for me whatsoever. But the couple of times that I took the stone out and, used it set it on the altar, that I felt her envelop me. And when I moved my hand, I could see, it was like seeing double when I would move my hands or when I looked at myself in a mirror when I had the stone out and she enveloped me. I could see an outline of a woman and a woman's hand that was around my hand. It was a shadow of a hand that completely surrounded my hand. It was a shadow of a face that completely overlapped my face. And I knew it was her. And she was acting through the stone. She was attached to the stone and she was acting through the stone with it. And for those of you who are worried, you don't have any connection to the religion of voodoo. Do not feel like she's going to reach out and touch you. I will warn you of this. It's strong. It will affect you emotionally. When you go to bed tonight, more than likely, there's a good chance you're not going to have a good sleep tonight once I take the stone out of this box and show it to you. It's a good chance you're not going to sleep well tonight. There's a lot of energy that comes off the stone. It will affect your dream patterns. It won't last more than a night or two, I promise you, because I'm going to seal it right back away. But I will tell you this. You're going to have some really, really crazy nightmares and dreams out of this. I'd be very curious about some of the dreams that you would have. So if you have any, please, drop me a line on Twitter or tell me about the dream in the comments. I would love to hear about it personally, just to see how she affects non-believers outside the faith. Okay? And with that, let me show you the stone. The box is open. Let me turn it around. Just heard it move. It smells like ass. I have some herbs in this thing. Okay. Okay, guys. If anybody has any, meters that measure energy levels, and EM meters that measure that, the box is open. The stone is in my left hand. It is bitterly cold to the touch. The room, the cold is going up my arm, but the room itself is getting incredibly warm right now. Incredibly warm right now. But my arm right now up to my shoulder feels like I have it wrapped in ice right now. Okay. Anybody ready to see it? It's heavy. It doesn't... It's in my hand. It feels incredibly heavy. Now the cold has moved from my shoulder and it's working its way across my chest and up my neck. But this is a piece of Marie Laveau's tomb. This is a very powerful... I'm going to just say it's a powerful occult object. Because she's... part of her spirit is now attached to this. I'm getting some really stabbing pains in my head. Having it this close to my eyes. My vision is a little bit blurry. I can actually hear right now somebody beating drums. Very, very ghostly in the background right now. Marie Laveau, Mambo Laveau. Il pacte detente, Marie Laveau. Il detente means no, me. I was telling her I had absolutely no need to harm her. I have no need to seek governance with her. I am merely sharing her strength and her power with all of you. If you want to type a question, maybe get an EVP off of this, it might be a good idea. Because I hear something saying voices, 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 voices. So I think she knows she has an audience right now. So if you want to type a question or ask a question out loud to the screen, I would do that if I were you. Do not think it's silly to do something like that. I'm going to give this another minute, and then I'm going to put it away, seal it back away, because now the cold has reached across my chest and is moving down my torso to my legs. It's already enveloped my right hand. The room is still incredibly hot. like I'm sitting beside a great fire, sitting on the ground beside a great fire. Now I'm going to put it away, back in the hex box. My body feels like, when your foot goes to sleep or your hand goes to sleep, you get that pin prickly feeling. That's what it feels right now when I put that stone away. The cold is receding from me very quickly, but it's leaving that pins and needles feeling behind. And the room is starting to feel cooler now. Alrighty, things are getting back to normal with me in the room right now. That's a good thing. Okay, let me explain a little bit more about a hex box. Hex boxes, and people have heard me talk about that I have several rooms, I call them my paranormal safe rooms, in the house that I have set up as supernatural Faraday cages. I designed a threshold at every door and every window that if anything crosses across it that's spiritual in nature or paranormal in nature, it will leave a bulk of its power behind it. So it won't be helpless, but it'll be able to do less damage to me or my family when it crosses those thresholds. This hex box is the same way. It's a little bit more extreme, though. It's a type of supernatural Faraday cage. It doesn't let energies from the outside influence what's inside of it, and the energies on the inside can't influence the world around it outside the box. I have a lot of objects. Well, not a lot. I have a good number of objects like this I've collected. Sometimes I've taken them from people's homes. Like I said before, like pieces of, this and that that had had human attachments to it, and they became haunted objects that I've been able to put away. They're more pleasant. Most of them are pleasant to be around. There's a couple though that are absolutely terrifying to be around. It's like something is screaming in your head constantly when you have it outside the box. And I've talked about poltergeist activity before, but there's an increase of poltergeist activity when you have some of these objects outside of the Faraday boxes, outside of these hex boxes. So you don't have them sealed away. Alrighty, guys. I didn't pay much attention to any of the comments. But again, if there's anything that anybody would like to tell me that happened tonight, I would love to hear about it in the comments or on Twitter. I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. I hope everybody was thoroughly entertained. Had a great time having Bonnie on here. Yeah. Just to let you know, Mike at Super Horror Show, just to let you know, that's actually very common when you're in contact with powerful supernatural energies, and you're only getting a piece of it. So it's easier to be able to seal it away. So again, guys, had a great time with you tonight. Thank you all for coming on. I look forward to seeing you again on the next What the Fuck Paranormal Chat with the Naked Bigfoot. I being the Naked Bigfoot. If you like what you saw tonight, please hit the like button. If you didn't like it, you can hit the dislike button. You're not going to hurt a feeling. Leave comments, leave constructive criticism. You can find me on Twitter. You can look up Mike the Naked Bigfoot, or you can go to @VoodooMan3. That links to my profile. Feel free to follow. I will follow back. You'll see follow updates on this channel. I try to do two chats a week with everybody. So I'm going to try to work it in a third one at some point. There's a lot of good stuff coming up. I hope you find interesting. Again, like, share, subscribe. Again, I hope everybody had a good time, learned something, became a little bit more curious about the world of haunted objects. I do offer this advice. If you wish to go and start collecting these objects or start studying these objects, some of them can be incredibly dangerous, so please be careful and do not go into a situation you're not 100% informed about or prepared for. There's that. I can't even tell you how many times I said that's a story for another day, but I know I said it enough to where if you've been drinking, you're feeling really fucking good right now. So, so do not drink and drive. As always, have a great night, guys. I love you. I appreciate you so much. Until we meet again.